Hi everyone, welcome to this webinar. Dynamo Northeast, as you guys probably hopefully know, have had a strong heritage in thinking about talent to fuel the growth of our tech economy in the Northeast. We've been involved in various initiatives in the past, such as helping to establish the UTC College, working with universities and many other training providers in the region to think about how we really develop a really strong talent ecosystem for the benefit of our businesses and the broader kind of ecosystem that we're trying to create up here. This event is, I hope, one of many more to come as we start to develop our Talent Engine programme. We've managed to secure funding from the North of Tyne Combined Authority to work in this space of really developing the talent and being proactive around how businesses contribute to the development of talent within their workforces. So I was really pleased when Maxine and Sally from Beyond Partners got in touch to ask if they could run a workshop and bring in some of our business and education leaders to talk about what's going on in the market, what they're doing to innovate in the space of talent development. And so this is our first kind of, I guess, workshop in this space for some time, but we're hoping to create a series of events that build upon kind of the conversations we have today. So without any further ado, let me hand over to Sally and Maxine, who will introduce themselves, what Beyond Partners do, and then introduce all of our panelists.
Good morning, and a warm welcome to everybody who's joining us today. And we're delighted that you join us, and the panelists that we've recruited today are also going to be with us. This is our first webinar with Dynamo since we joined earlier this year, so we're excited to get going. So just a little bit of information about Beyond Partners. We support ambitious businesses who want to achieve more with their people and their brand. And we do this by putting the foundations and building blocks in place to help you in place to create sustainable and scalable growth. We like to create joined up and meaningful brand and people strategies, which create strong leaders, relevant brands, and also a great place to work, because after all, we believe that happy people build brilliant brands. We help create, our philosophy is built on creating authentic touch points throughout the journey of your organisation, whether it's internal for your people or external for your customers. It just means that you're creating a caring culture, developing your purpose and values, and attracting and recruiting the right kind of talent for your business. So that's about us. And also, as we're local to the Northeast, as you'll be able to tell by our accents, we're both passionate about the Northeast, and we've seen the tech sector create vibrancy in the Northeast and open up a lot of employment opportunities, coupled with the strong university and colleges that we have in the area. And I suppose over the recent years, the Northeast has become a fastest tech growing sector outside of London regions, which we're pretty proud of. So yeah, you go us. But how do we sustain the momentum and this growth, and particularly in light of the changing and challenging environments and the landscapes that we all face ourselves in? We've got an experienced panel that we're really proud to share with you today. And we're going to delve quite deep into what is becoming the issue for tech businesses, which is attracting and retaining top talent. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Sally, and she'll make some introductions for us.
Thank you. And so firstly, we're going to start with James Conway, who's Head of Operations from Tombola. Welcome, James, and thanks for joining us. So Tombola is a family-run tech company which has grown to become Britain's biggest online bingo firm. It was launched less than 15 years ago and today employs more than 700 people, with the majority headquartered in Sunderland. They have further offices across Europe, and Tombola is completely unique in its field, as all of its games are designed, developed and managed in-house. Prior to James's current role as head of operations, James was a software developer for over 10 years. So next up on our panel is Dr. Joanna Berry. Joanna was born and brought up in Hartlepool and is currently Associate Professor for Entrepreneurship at Durham University Business School, teaching new venture creation, entrepreneurship, innovation, marketing, and a wide variety of other management disciplines to MBA, DBA, PhD, MSc, and undergraduate students. I don't know what all of those are. Maybe we can expand on that later. Joanna has also founded, bought, and run a variety of digital and creative companies and continues her personal and practical involvement with new venture startups. She places a particular emphasis on supporting women in STEM agenda, and as our representative today from the world of education, we're looking forward to hearing Joanna's views on how we can retain top students in the region. So moving on to Rob Mathieson, who's the founder and managing director at ION, a financial transformation specialist helping businesses to adopt leading cloud accounting and CRM technologies. Following a successful career in software development, Rob started his first business aged 27 before working for a leading investment firm and then starting up ION in 2016. Passionate about learning new skills and exploring new ideas, Rob has always been inspired to support people on their career journey, and this year started the ION Academy to help get more people in finance and technology roles. Hopefully we'll get a chance to hear more about this initiative later on this morning from Rob. Next, we have Lorna Madden, Head of Recruitment at Opencast Software. Opencast is an independent technology company headquartered in Newcastle, which counts Barclays, Sage, and NHS amongst its clients. Having doubled in size over the past year, they're on an ambitious growth path and expect to employ 500 people by 2025. Welcome to Lorna. Thank you for joining us. Our next panelist is Sarah King, who's CEO and co-founder of We Are Radikl. And We Are Radikl is a community which stands for women who want to start, run, and grow their own business. She describes her purpose as to radically disrupt the dominant narrative of entrepreneurship and investment in the UK. And why? Because only 1% of VC funding goes to women. We're looking forward to hearing Sarah's perspective on how this translates when attracting women in tech startups who may be looking for more diverse and inclusive employers. And finally, Sophie Smallwood, who's the founder and co-CEO of Roleshare. Sophie describes herself as a globe-trotting tech founder who's ex-eBay and Facebook, and she's driven to build better societies. She's co-founded Roleshare, a tech platform to fix the problems which professionals face at transition points in their life, where flexibility is needed, for example, caregiving, health, and learning. The more strategic or senior the job, the more inflexible it is, so people leave companies. This drives gender seniority gaps, harms diversity, and damages economic growth. At Roleshare, they create part-time work that's as rewarding as full-time, so everyone can grow their careers without burning out. They do this by matching people to share jobs, and they help companies attract and retain diverse talent who feel well and are more productive. Roleshare has been recognised by the World Economic Forum as a pathway to economic transformation. It's great to have Sophie with us today to share her perspective of growing a team in the tech market in a different region, and also to hear how businesses are embracing new ways of working in order to attract and retain their talent. So that's all the panelists that we have with us today, quite a cast, I'm sure you'll agree. So I want to start off the discussion by looking at the talent trends and challenges in the tech sector. So Rob, can I start with you and ask you, what are your main talent challenges that you've experienced at ION, and what impact is it having on your business?
Good morning. Yeah, I think the first topic I'll bring up is one that will definitely be impacting pretty much everybody on this call, which is really just the lack of talent, or the lack of available talent in the market, specifically in the Northeast at the moment, and the growing cost of that talent as well. Obviously, as people need to recruit, people move from business to business, the costs increase, and then it just makes it harder and harder for businesses to actually be able to scale up and grow. So we recognize this is a problem, and we've got some fairly aggressive plans for the next couple of years, and we couldn't achieve that by functioning the way the market currently does. You know, we don't really want to get into a price war or a bidding war for resource and talent. You know, there's usually only two winners there, the employee and the recruiter. So I think we've got a stronger interest in actually how we develop that talent and grow that talent and retain that talent with some loyalty, as opposed to just going out to the market and trying to buy any available people that there are. So I'm happy to talk about the academy that we use in a little bit more detail later on, if that helps.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks, Rob. And I think that's really interesting, two sort of main points: the lack of talent and the growing cost of talent. Are there any other members of the panel who are experiencing similar things going on in the market, whether that's Northeast or whether that's sort of throughout the country?
Yeah, absolutely. We see that at Tombola. I think we were in the fortunate position over the last 18 months of actually trying to grow our workforce, and we struggled in the current market. So, we've kind of started our graduate program quite early this year, and we've had quite a lot of success in that area. But yeah, that's how we've decided we're going to have to solve that problem. I think the rise in cost of people in the market as well is an important one, because I think what we're nervous of, I think, an increase in real salaries isn't necessarily a bad thing for our workers. However, I think we're nervous that it could end up being a little bit inflationary. So as Rob says, we don't want to get into a bidding war with other businesses. We're trying to kind of measure that, but it's hard to find the data to really help us make decisions in that area.
Mm-hmm. Sophie, you're coming at this from a slightly different geographical area. Are you experiencing the same things in the south of the country?
I mean, yes, we on our end are also looking for tech talent. We're a startup, and we are looking for really important key hires. When you're a startup, you need to make sure that your first early stage team is really aligned to your mission and is going to be there for the growth. And so it is very challenging, and we're actually looking for solutions, outside of the norm. In essence, how can we be how can we look beyond the full time? So all of our jobs, for example, are also shareable. We're very flexible. We're fully remote, fully distributed. We're trying to expand, our ways of working to try and reach as many potential talent out there, and looking at role design as an alternative pathway to attracting talent. But it is very challenging, and we've also looked beyond the UK, to be fair, because we are a very early stage startup. And when we have, we've advertised roles like a digital project manager, we've gotten a huge amount of talent. So we had a large talent pool to select from. But as we're looking for a full stack engineer, for example, that's much harder, and we're just not getting as many potential applicants. And when, you do want to hire relatively quickly, it can take about 3 months to actually get somebody in. And that's usually a pretty good deal. It is very challenging, I think, across the board for all.
Mm-hmm. Lorna, I see you've got your hand up there.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a really interesting subject, actually. And I think for us at Opencast, knowing the amount of people that we're going to have to hire over the coming months and years, I think we've actually embraced the fact that we can start to open up and recruit nationally. And internationally as well. I think, at the start of the year, we started to think about how, yes, we've got talent here in the region. Absolutely, we want to keep that. But the landscape has changed so much over the past 12 to 18 months since the pandemic. And I think as an organisation, we've got the confidence now to be able to look at, retain talent in the region, but certainly reach out beyond that to try and draw tech talent into the region as well, both through relocation, but also remote working strategies. So yeah, I think overall that's really supported us as a business, and I think we'll continue to do that.
Mm-hmm. And how successful have you been in? It's an interesting one to attract talent into the region. We talk quite a lot about talent drain, so people leaving the region, but attracting people into the region feels even harder almost to keeping people here. How successful have you been with that?
I mean, it's particularly competitive out there at the moment. I think we've been, I'd like to think we've been successful in being able to raise our profile outside of the region. Opencast is particularly, you know, we're not a particularly large organisation, so our marketing team have to do a lot of work to try and reach those who, you know, won't be aware of us, and you know, will think, well, you know, who are Opencast? So I think for us that's been particularly important. But it feels the positive feedback that we receive from candidates and you know, people who are exploring us as a business is starting to show that we're doing the right things. It's showing the right signs.
Mm-hmm.
Can I chip in a bit here? Yeah.
Yes.
I'm echo what everybody else is saying. One of the things that we talk about when I'm teaching entrepreneurship is building these entrepreneurial teams and how you find the talent. So I feel like I have to establish my credentials in amongst all of these incredibly experienced people, because, you know, I don't recruit people per se, but we talk about recruiting people, which is almost as important. And one of the things that I think is really interesting over the last 18 months, I think what's happened, and looking at the pandemic crisis particularly, is that it hasn't so much disrupted as accelerated things that were happening anyhow. So traditional hiring practices that we're going to have to change anyhow have simply become almost obsolete. And a lot of the skills that were needed have become, they've got an increasingly short shelf life, because technology has started to move so much more quickly to accommodate the changes that the pandemic has fast forwarded to a certain extent. So if you look at the research, 3,500 people in one piece of research, there were only something like 30% of new hires had the skills that were needed for their current roles, never mind for the future roles that they might have to pick up in some pretty key roles. And if you look at the talent pools that recruiters tap into, they're increasingly outdated. There are a lot of people over the last 15, 20 months who've taught themselves to code in their bedrooms just because of lockdown. You know, there are a lot of very talented, gifted people out there who can do stuff that haven't learned it through traditional routes, who wouldn't necessarily be aware of the traditional places they could go to look for jobs. They've got critical skills, but they've picked them up informally in their own basements. So they wouldn't necessarily be aware of the fact that you are even looking for them. And candidates are getting very much more selective, I think, about where they go. You know, is it meaningful work? Can they work close to their family? Can they work remotely? Can they work with their own sort of schedule in mind? So you have to offer a very different package to the package that they might have been offered 2 years ago. So it's a very, very different world that recruiters and employees are having to accommodate. They're having to come to a different set of accommodations, which is a really interesting space that possibly smaller, more nimble, more agile and entrepreneurial companies are better equipped to accommodate these people than your big traditional corporates with their big fancy advertising and their very fixed view of who they are and what they look like to the outside world can actually do. So the stories that small companies can tell are maybe more interesting to these people.
That's really interesting that you bring that up, Joanna. I was reading a report by the CIPD recently, and they suggested that 21% of employers now offer career return programs, which is up from 19% on last year, and up to 21% offer mid-career change programs, which is up from 16%. And I suppose my question really is to Sarah and Sophie, who come from startups and smaller organisations, is knowing that, is there any barriers to entry for people who are retraining, you know, going from what Joanna's just mentioned about people learning to code in their background? Are you experiencing any of that in the people that you talk to, and that the people that you hire into your teams, into your programs? Specifically the barriers to entry of that was a convoluted question. Apologies for that.
Sarah, would you like to go first?
Thanks, Sophie. I think I'll pick up that question. I think some reflections in terms of that regional piece. I think for us over the last 18 months, and Joanna, to your point, I completely agree with you. There's been a kind of leveling of opportunities in some way, because to my mind, the idea of region has not fully, but almost become redundant, because actually we were all in the position of working remotely. There was a kind of leveling in terms of opportunity. We certainly experienced growth opportunity because things were happening online as opposed to needing to travel across the country. So for us, when we think about recruitment, yes, we have relationships with our local universities, and we're really fortunate in Nottingham to have 2 universities. But for us, it's more of a UK-wide search in terms of talent. I think also, and I'm sure we'll come on to this later, but the real differentiator, I think, comes down to purpose, because, you know, the nuts and bolts in terms of salary, flexibility, you know, remote working, all of those pieces, I think so many organizations are embracing them now, that your differentiator becomes your purpose, and what is it that you're doing in the world, and how does that therefore act as a magnet to the people who really get behind that vision. And when they do get behind that vision, they're then really loyal to what you're creating within your organization. I think in terms of challenges, so Maxine, it was challenges around career changes.
But potentially, and specifically into sort of retraining into something that you necessarily might not have had the skills or experience to do so, had it not been for the pandemic.
Yeah, I think that we've definitely seen people, I think, maybe less reskilling and more taking the time to reflect on, what do I really want from my career, and where and how can I best use the talents that I have in a way that is aligned with what I'm passionate about. I've definitely seen more of that shift, and people therefore looking for opportunities which are, you know, we've been approached by people who have said, we love your vision, we love your purpose. I've not really worked in this sector before, but this is what my skill set is. How might you be able to use it? And I think when you're able to draw that type of person to you who has a really interesting skill set and is passionate about what you're doing, I think that's where something really, really magical and special can happen, because again, you get that loyalty from those individuals who join your movement and your greater purpose with your business.
Thank you.
And to add to what Sarah was saying, on our end, one of the things that we are sort of tapping into are societies and organizations that in effect help people go through that midlife retraining. So there are 12-week programs where people can literally learn how to code, and then ultimately on the back of that, they want jobs in tech, and that's great. Now they might not be at the level where we need them to be, but they could potentially come in and then grow and, you know, become a key member of the team as far as leadership goes, because they have previous experience, they're tenured, they just are regaining new skills and want to put them to work. So it is a really interesting offering in a market where, you know, talent is scarce. It's like, can you, do you have capacity to be able to train? And that's a question when you're hiring. Do I have capacity to train, or do I need somebody who can just like pick up and go? So that's a question that you have to ask yourself, obviously, when you're hiring. But one of the things that we found is that indeed a lot of people that we're talking to specifically who are interested in sharing. So what we do is we help people come together to share jobs. Oftentimes people who are already employed, who are sort of at that transition point where they need to scale back for a number of reasons. And oftentimes in men in particular, something we've seen of recent is, you know, men want to scale back their full-time roles to get new skills, right? So they want to get their MBAs. We've seen it also with women who are co-CEOs of companies where they're going and getting their executive MBAs, but they want to sustain their careers. So I think we're seeing more and more people now in the workforce who want to approach this like career portfolio mindset, where they want to have the steady career growth that they've had and that stability that they've gained from their career, and also the self-confidence that they have from that vocation, but they want to explore other things and learn as well. And as an employer, I think it's something to think about as a retention strategy, but also as an attraction strategy. Can you bring in people who have alsos outside of your job and support them through that, so that you get the best of them when they're there with you, even if it's not the full-time, 40 hours a week that you would like. And that's something that we've had to do. An example is our Chief Product Officer, Polly, has been working with us on a part-time basis. It's been wonderful for the majority of our journey. We didn't need any more than that. And now we're scaling up. We need to get full coverage for the role. And we want to retain her. We value her deeply. But she's also working part-time at Not in the High Street, which is a marketplace, online marketplace. And we're happy to continue and support her through that journey. So we're looking for someone to come in and share the role with her, so that we can keep her knowledge, her expertise, support her in her whole life, but also then bring in another person who will have complementary skills, who can bring things perhaps to the table that she might not be able to. And then they'll get to work together. So we're trying to be really, really flexible. That comes down to, and a lot of that career portfolio mindset that Polly has, for example, is really about remaining agile and learning and, in essence, living the career that she wants to. I sort of call it the employee-led workforce, which I think is really where we're going toward.
I think it's a really interesting way of working. And I guess, if have you got any kind of barriers that you would say, well, if you were doing that sort of role sharing, you're recruiting someone, it's good because they're going to be bringing knowledge from the other business that they're working in, but there might be situations, I guess, where you don't want the knowledge to creep out of your business. So you'd have to be quite careful, I think, in who you were selecting to do that.
I mean, it's the same thing with freelancers, contract workers, it's the same, you have to follow a professional protocol. And ultimately the agreement is that you wouldn't work with a direct competitor. And other than that, if there's, knowledge transfer in a way that is, just, we do it anyway in our day-to-day lives. If it's just broad knowledge transfer that benefits her in her trade that she can then apply to our company, then great. But of course, when it comes to a competitive nature, then that's not appropriate, but it wouldn't be appropriate anyway for a freelancer or contract worker anyway.
Mm-hmm. So just want to go to someone who's hiring at the moment, maybe Rob or James or Lorna, just to the attitude of the people that you're recruiting. Have you seen change in what their demands are and what they're seeking over the past sort of 12, 18 months? Is that changing? Sophie mentioned this employee-led marketplace. Are you seeing that where things are getting led more by the people who you're recruiting?
I'll start with that one then. Yeah, so I mean, we're pretty careful about who we hire. And obviously the big factor at the moment is this kind of ongoing increase in salaries that's is just because of the shape of the market. Now, if somebody comes to us and indicates that that's the reason they're looking to move from one business to the next, that's just, for us, it's an instant strike through. If that's all they're looking for is a pay rise, that we're not the business for them. That's not to say in any way that we're not paying competitively. We absolutely are. It's just the fact that you've got huge challenges around retaining people who are effectively gone for hire. Which unfortunately the market, there's a lot of that at the moment just because of the demand. You can understand that there's some really significant salaries going on, so people want to take that opportunity while they can. But we're very open to anybody who comes to work for us, that we expect them to work really hard. We expect them to put a lot of effort in and a lot of commitment into the job that they're going to be doing. And again, if somebody's like, not for me, fine. But we also understand the people that we do employ that are really successful are the people that do actually want that. They do want to be pushed, they do want to be challenged, they do want to work on complex problems. And sometimes it's not going to be done in 7.5 hours. Sometimes it's going to take a little bit longer, but the outcome of what they're working on is going to be so much greater. And actually, those people usually are really fantastic for teams. And building up that culture within, working together. We don't have PlayStations, we don't have pool tables. We don't, you know, we try to build a professional environment. We actually do have 2 beanbags, but they're for my kids. We're trying to build an environment which isn't around the benefit culture, you know, and there's an awful lot of companies that's just become their sole focus now, is what can I do that's one thing better than what my competitors do, and it's just absolutely the wrong strategy for hiring good people. So that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that can be very much on the surface, that everything looks good on the surface, but then once you sort of delve down into actually what is it like working there, you know, it can sometimes be, you know, not a great culture, and yes, they might have a beer fridge, but it's not a very nice place to work. So I think that whole piece around, you know, creating the right environment for people is really key when you're trying to retain people, and obviously attract them as well.
I'm sorry, just while you mentioned that, the other thing, and you're absolutely spot on, for us, likability is as important as capability.
Yeah.
You know, we've had a few people who pass through the business, and, you know, we've seen the effects of having those people where they aren't sharers, you know, they don't work well with others, and the impact they can have culturally. And we recognized a few years ago we would never hire anybody like that again. So every single person in our business, I would say, is incredibly likable. You know, we're not a big business, we're 40 strong, but I can tell you I've got 40 people in there that people like, you know, and so we will never hire anybody that people don't, or not intentionally anyway. So again, I think that's, again, just incredibly important. And it's really important for anybody new who's joining your business as well, because there's nothing worse than joining a business in the first week, sat in the kitchen, nobody to talk to, having lunch on your own, no onboarding program, you know. And actually, when, you know, some of the best feedback we get is that they come along and just say, everyone's been so kind, so nice. They've come over, they've talked to me, they've helped me, you know. And if you want to buy loyalty from people, that's a really good way to start it.
Yeah, and I think what you've really described there nicely is your value proposition of why people should come and work in your business, Rob. And I think that's probably the best way to kind of broadcast to the outside world of the candidates that you're looking to attract, is this is what you get by working in your organization. I think organizations that are successfully able to communicate that value proposition are able to attract the best talent to their companies. That's what I think. I was going to touch on Lorna. I know you have a really strong value proposition. I follow you on LinkedIn, and I really enjoy the posts that you share of sort of new starters that join the business. And I think from an outside person looking in, I really get a feel for your culture of the business that you're creating and the people that you employ. And I wonder how important those stories are to your recruitment process.
Hugely, actually. I think I speak to so many people that have gone into organisations, joined new businesses, and it's kind of not what it says on the tin. And actually, it turns out that, you know, that they're incredibly unhappy and wanting to move because they've been led down a path of a story that isn't true. So I think it's so important to be authentic and genuine about your proposition and your promise to people that they will be cared for and they will be empowered and trusted to do the right thing. And I think culturally it feels like we've got it right. Obviously, we're going through a huge amount of growth at the moment, and it's important that we retain that and kind of wrap it in a box and keep it as is. And I think people are quite nervous as we grow that it will change and we'll get these sort of rigid processes and levels of hierarchy and things like that in place, which isn't Opencast at all. And so I think, you know, when we look at an employee value proposition and how we share our business externally, we want that to be true and we want that to be representative of the business that we are. Hence, it isn't kind of, we make sure that there's a broad spread of people sharing that, and it isn't just any one set group of people delivering that message externally. We want people to feel like they know what it's like to work at Opencast ahead of joining us. And you know, again, so many times we receive feedback past or post recruitment process to say, you know what, it really is true, the story that you told us during the recruitment process, and that's really refreshing for us.
Mm-hmm. Cate, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I think it's a really great themes, and I think something that I've been kind of thinking about recently is almost like with like two different like compensation packages that you offer. There's like the hard comp, which is very 80s, right? Which is like, what car am I going to get, and like what's my salary and all of that kind of stuff. And there's a broader recognition that actually people like there's almost like a base expectation there of like, this is what I kind of need to pay the bills and so on. But the other side is much more around their own development. And so it's kind of, if you can set yourself up as a deliberately developmental organization, which is focused on wherever someone comes to you, it's about the value add that you give them. Actually, very much like how a school or university will think about the cohort that comes in. You know, what am I helping them to learn? What do they want to learn? How am I facilitating that? That is a huge element of someone's compensation on a personal level, and actually can be more powerful than pure kind of money or whatever. And what I think that's sort of really interesting at different people's kind of career stages. In early careers, it depends what people expect of an employer, right? Some people expect that, others don't really know what to expect. But if you can give them that, like the loyalty that will drive, and how they just don't even really spend a lot of time looking for other things because they're busy developing, and they see, you know, lots of opportunities, and you're helping to kind of drive that. That's just so valuable to them that, you know, they don't get into the mindset, Rob, that you were talking about of like searching for the extra 5-10k, because it's like, well, you know, in the grand scheme of things, if I follow this path, that will lead to so much more value for me, that, you know, it's not that incremental kind of playing of games doesn't become a feature. And I think sort of in the sort of regional context, or like the regional point, what I feel like, you know, I'm on a mission for within Dynamo is like, the more companies you can have that are behaving like those deliberately developmental organizations, that's going to create great things within our talent pool, which benefits everybody. And it's just that sort of that mindset of, you know, one of your key roles as an employer is to figure that out. And if you do that, your other purpose, whether it's, you know, creating great bingo games, delivering great finance systems, and, you know, building software for public sector, like that will follow. You know, it's almost like if you get that piece right, it's like the other things will follow, and you will be a successful organization. And I think that's kind of what I'm hearing from the success stories here, are that, you know, that is as important as any other kind of commercial strategy, basically. You know, that's the central point. So yeah, really interesting.
I agree with Cate, and I think, you know, if you come back to that baseline that A's hire A's and B's hire C's, and we want to be A's hiring A's, like Steve Jobs said, you know, you don't hire smart people and tell them what to do. You hire smart people so that they can tell you what to do, right? That's what we all want, isn't it? We want less better people in our organizations. We don't want lots and lots of average people. We want less really good people that we pay really well to do a really good job. And if you come back to the research around this, what really motivates people in the end isn't really the money. It's once you've got enough, once you've got a roof over your head, and you can, you know, afford to buy your kids what they really need, not what they want necessarily, but what they really need. And maybe a beanbag is it, but that's fine. What really motivates people is autonomy and mastery and purpose. And if you can give them that in their job, if you can give them the ability to do what they feel they need to do, their autonomy, and if you can give them a sense of mastery, and you can give them that training that they need to become masters at their job, and if you can give them a really clear sense of purpose, and if the stories that you're telling the people that you're recruiting lead them to believe that you will give them that sense of purpose, and they come in and they do their job and they find that they're getting autonomy and mastery and purpose, bingo, job done, you know. And if we can do that, then in the Northeast, we do a lot of that in the Northeast, and Dynamo does a lot of help supporting people from the start to do that. I think that we will become that magnetic North that we need to be to create the pipeline and that virtuous sort of magnetic system that generates a hugely attractive environment that doesn't just breed really good people, but that keeps them and that attracts them in from the misty sort of environment that people like Sarah live in. And we can, I think, do a really good job on that front. We already are with some superb companies up here.
I think there's something really interesting in there as well about how those businesses who are driven by all of the things that you just mentioned. So it's not just a profit drive, actually it's a purpose drive, and it's also awareness of our impact on the planet and our impact on people. I think where those organizations can come together in a region to learn together, to share best practice, to create those learning opportunities for the people within your organizations, that's when a region becomes magnetic. Like, it's not a region in and of itself, it's what are the people within that space and within that place doing together. And I think that the more that those of us who are leading those types of organizations can come together and say, this is who we are, this is what we're about, and we're learning with these other organizations, you then start to create an ecosystem, not only of people who hold those values within your own business, but beyond that. And I think that that's where you then see real uplift for a region, because somebody then might move to that region because of this ecosystem that's been created. But that doesn't happen within the silo of our organization. It happens when we reach out and we're collaborating and sharing learning together.
It's what we used to call in academic circles the Triple Helix, which governments keep trying to create by building buildings. Put a university together with something financial, with something public sector, and just squish them together geographically and hope they work. And it doesn't work. It happens in Silicon Valley fortuitously. It happens in Wall Street fortuitously. It's an emergent thing, but it's happening in the Northeast because of events like this, because Dynamo is doing such a great job, and because we have fabulous people, and we just need to nudge it. It's a nudge thing. It's an emergent thing. And this sort of activity that we're doing here today, and the sort of people that we've got, and the sort of thinking and talking that we're doing in events like this, I think, are what make things happen, not building buildings.
Yeah, and I think what everyone's saying here, Sarah and Joanna, is really interesting. It comes down to freedom. And, you've heard of the term boomerang, when an employee leaves the company and then comes back. Why should they have to resign in order to boomerang? And I think there's something around giving them space. And this is why I love sharing, because, you can give people the space to go and do the things that they need to do outside, to learn, to grow, to care for themselves. And then they're going to be wanting to come back to your company over and over and over and over. And if you think about it, there's a ton of untapped talent out there that don't fit the mold that we expect of employees today to be, 1,000% there. So many people I've spoken with recently say, oh, well, I want my people to be there 1,000%. Why do you want one person to be there 1,000%? Why can't you have multiple people who would like to do 500% together? Like, this concept of like what we expect people to do isn't necessarily in line with how they want to live their lives. And we're seeing both in the US and Europe, the OECD projected that it was 2030 and that's 2027, but they're anticipating that by 2027, 50% of all skilled workers will be working in one or more part-time jobs. So companies just have to start to get used to this idea that employees aren't going to want, or the best talent are not going to want to be your full-time talent anymore.
James, you've got your hand up there.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of just follow up on that point about authenticity. I think Tombola's forever had that challenge around, well, we're a gambling firm, so our purpose is morally divisive. But I think what we've always had to do is make sure that we don't try and sell something that we're not. We've always had to be authentic, in almost kind of brutally cold in doing it. So one of the questions we always ask during the recruitment process is straight up, we're a gambling firm. Are you going to be comfortable working for Tombola? But what we've seen, I think, we've done a lot of recruitment. We spoke to a lot of candidates, and I think what we've seen is that there's a massive diversity in what people actually want and what people value. And I think we've just had to accept that, some people value some things that they're just not going to be able to find at Tombola, and that's fine. And we'll shake their hands and, wish them farewell. But what we've seen that is global is that technical people want to learn forever. They want to learn. They want to start somewhere. They want the opportunity to learn and get better and get better. And I think we've had a lot of success because of the nature of our business. You know, your introduction, you mentioned we build everything in-house in Tombola. Now, it's online bingo. It sounds simple, but actually it's really technically quite complicated. So there's massive opportunity for technical people in Tombola to learn. And we've kind of used that as one of the main perks for recruiting technical people into Tombola. You know, the massive breadth of stuff that people can get involved in. There's many routes into Tombola, and there's many routes through Tombola from a technical perspective. And we've always tried to focus on that. And I think we're having quite a lot of success with that, actually. Like I mentioned before, we've had quite a lot of success with graduates and apprentices. You know, a lot of our future stars have come in through that path. Also, more than half of our business is non-technical. You know, we have a massive team of home workers, and we've had, you know, some of our future stars have come from that background as well, non-technical backgrounds. But yeah, and I think what is global is that people want to be able to see their path through the business. They want to be able to see how their career is going to progress, or how it will possibly progress. And we've been putting a lot of work and effort into that over the past months to try and give people clarity. And I think we're having quite a bit of success with that.
And Rob, just coming back to ION and the academy that you've recently started, do you want to tell us a bit about that and how that's working for ION?
Yeah, so I mean, we informally started the academy about this time last year, but we had our first proper intake, I would say, January this year. We decided that we didn't want to be in the model of buying talent. We wanted to build talent and grow it ourselves. And we, you know, there's a lot of people in the northeast of England who would relish the opportunity, you know, to get involved in these businesses. I guess part of the challenge there is joining those people up with the businesses, which is a separate conversation and a known problem. But there's actually plenty of relatively smart people up here who you can access and train. So we knew we wanted to do that. We had a slightly different challenge to probably what other businesses have. We do financial systems. So really, you're either looking for an accountant who just happens to be a programmer, which is highly unlikely, or you're looking for a programmer who also wants to be an accountant, which is even more unlikely. So really, there wasn't really a pool of talent out there that we were going to easily access, unless, again, we started moving across the country. And then again, you were starting to buy talent as opposed to build it. So based on the ambition of the business and where we knew we were going to need to be, for us, it just made more sense that we invested very heavily in an academy to do that. And I will add, it does take a lot of effort. You know, an academy is not, actually, we're going to bring 3 graduates through the door and we'll pair them up with a senior developer or something like that and just have them sit next to them for 3 months. You know, a proper academy is a 12-month program. It has a syllabus. It has quality assurance gates to ensure that, you know, people who are training are actually meeting the requirements of where you need them to be. There's lots of hurdles. I'm very fortunate I didn't build it. Our operations director took that job on and he really seemed to enjoy it. But there's an awful lot of work to go in there, and it's also quite expensive. You know, you've also got the hiring of the individuals. You know, you've got to accept for maybe 3-4 months they aren't actually generating any revenue. But actually, once they are trained and they are skilled up and they can work for your business, they know your company inside out because they've been through a proper enablement program. They've got a set of skills that's really quite unique to them. And they're also, I guess I'm hoping they're going to be really loyal as well, you know, because we've made that commitment to them. I think it's really important that they have a view of what their career looks like, not for the next 12 months, but for the next 3 years. You know, or longer if possible, so they understand the various roles that they may get involved in, and equally what they will be paid across that time. And I think quite often it's people having a lack of foresight as to where they could be that makes them decide that actually they're going to look elsewhere because they just don't know maybe what they're going to earn or what they're going to learn across that period. So it does take quite a bit of effort, but actually I think for us it's probably enormously beneficial for us, but just for the Northeast in itself, in that we're producing talent that, yeah, it's not going to, they won't always stay with us. They'll move on. They'll go to other businesses without a doubt. You know, I think there's a level of, acceptance when you run a business for long enough that a lot of times people leave your business, not because they don't like it there, but just after, you know, a certain number of years, they need some change. They want to learn different things, have different skills. So there's those cycles that you have to deal with. And in turn, you know, people return, or you pick up other talent. And going back to what people were saying before, you know, there's some people in the market who just, they're looking for a new opportunity. They're looking for something exciting, and they might go there for less money, not more money, you know, because they really want to do that job. So it's tough to generalize, but I think one of the things we talked very early about was about the value proposition of a business. And I think you've got to be quite clear that it's actually the value proposition to the individual. You know, it's actually, you've almost got to carve that out for them, or what that looks like for them. And as much as what you want to press on them, what the business is like, actually, you've really got to bespoke it for them as well, for them to make them understand the journey that they're going to go on and commit to you with that. So yeah, our academy plan is, academy model, we've had about 15 people through it now. We'll be running another intake early next year. We'll be bringing another 5 people through. So we will let you know how it goes. Fantastic
initiative. And that's kind of, you're talking about employee value proposition moves us on to a question that we've had in the chat, and I think we'll sort of open up the floor to any questions that we've got in the remaining sort of 5 minutes. So the question is from Lindsay Dean, and it's about recruitment challenges. So some of you spoke about recruitment challenges due to the market dynamics. Are you experiencing retention challenges too, or is the EVP holding people in?
Can I jump and answer this one quickly? I know I've just spoken, so apologies. We made this decision about, well, it was about 6 months ago actually, to hire an internal recruiter, a talent manager. And it's probably one of the best things we've ever done. Because stepping away from recruiters, which I know are perceived as a necessary evil in some circumstances, but actually the wonderful thing about bringing an internal recruiter is that they are there designed to build relationships about your business, long-term relationships about your business, not about a dozen businesses. You know, so you're not expecting to go and recruit 100 people tomorrow, but you're hoping they're going to go and have 100 conversations with 100 people, you know, over the next year or so. So as and when they're looking at making career decisions and changes and things like that, they're far more aware of your business. They're far more understanding of what you're actually trying to achieve and whether or not it's in line with what they're trying to do. And I just think for us, it's made an enormous difference, complete culturally as well. It's just been a huge, huge change. And the nice thing is you can wrap recruitment up with onboarding and enablement as well, so to ensure those parts are done. So yeah, for us, that's been a huge change. I would highly recommend it to anybody who's considering it.
And Lorna, that's your role you hold in Opencast. Does that describe the type of work that you do there?
Yeah, I think very much so. I think it's about setting the right strategy to make sure you know, that we hit our goals as an organisation. I think kind of looking back at the question in terms of, is the EVP holding people in? Are we experiencing any retention challenges? I would say in terms of retention, we're doing well. There's always some room for improvement, but I think that what we're looking at currently within our people team is, how do we best care for our people? How do we unearth when there are challenges or problems in our organisation that could be dealt with earlier on, so that they don't become a problem, so that you don't end up with somebody handing in their notice? Because you know, talent is difficult to find. Once we find good people, we want to keep them, we want them to grow. But I think people are relatively bought into the story of Opencast and where we're heading. So for us, it's positive at the moment.
Great. I think there's another question which I'm going to see. I'm not very good with the tech. Hang on. Peter Neal shared that Joanna and Sophie make a really interesting point on retention. People are multidimensional, and perhaps SMEs are better able to create a multidimensional whole life support. And I guess that sums up nicely what we've just been talking about. Actually, it's, you know, people bring their whole self to work now, and it's an acknowledging that it's not just the 9 to 5, but it's everything else that goes on around it. And I think if you can tap into that, you're creating loyalty and engagement with your workforce, with your peers, and in creating a role where individuals are empowered and challenged at work as well, and that opportunity to grow and develop will obviously give them a very rewarding job with you.
There's a question here in the question and answer session back from Ian Birtwistle asking whether we're currently in a bubble of recruitment that has the potential to contract, or do we foresee the recruitment drive continuing into the near future?
Thank you for that. I didn't see
All
it.
right. No, you might not be able to see it down at the bottom. I know when you're hosting, sometimes you don't see these things. So are we in a bubble of recruitment, or do we foresee the recruitment drive continuing into the near future?
I think I'm a bit of a data geek, right? So I've been looking at a lot of labour market data as part of some kind of project work we're doing with public kind of government, basically. And I think the reality is there is not a broad recruitment, right? There's a lot of industries that are currently contracting, actually. But I think this trend we're seeing of technology careers, and I say that in a broad sense, right? It's not just developers, it's also people that can do design thinking, that can lead a project, that can bridge across like the financial thinking and systems engineering and so on. Like that is not a bubble. That is going to be like, I guess maybe if you think in a long-term sense, it might be a 20-year bubble. But I don't see any kind of signs globally of there being a like relent on this digital transformation that we like is happening and is even accelerated by the pandemic and kind of what that's meant for most operational organizations to be able to provide what they need in terms of services to whether it's customers, citizens, whatever kind of stakeholders they have. So I think that, you know, there are definitely places, people who are struggling with their careers, being made redundant and so on. But this kind of technology boom, I think, is, from my side, I don't see any signs of it stopping, and it's uniform. It's or at least in kind of Western economies, it's very similar patterns happening all over.
And I think also it's about thinking of the employee base that you want to retain as, you know, all of their needs are quite diverse. They're as diverse as they are. And it's about having a repertoire, a buffet of solutions that you can pull on to retain them. It's not a blanket coverage for every single employee. And I think it really comes down to enabling and rewarding managers who are really agile in how they work to retain their employees, because employees join good companies will leave bad managers. So how can we really encourage managers to be flexible and agile in addressing the needs of their individual employees on their respective teams? And I think that's really where the golden nugget is, and it's not easy to do, but if we give them the right tools, it's doable.
So thank you. So we're out of time nearly, but I just want to go around the screen and ask everyone, I'm going to limit you to 3 words of top tip of how Northeast tech businesses can attract and retain talent in 3 words. I'm going to start with you, Joanna, because you look like you were about to speak.
Okay. Hire for potential, not experience.
Very good. Would you like to nominate somebody, Joanna?
James.
I might need 4 words. Focus on career progression.
Brilliant.
And
Shall I nominate Lorna?
Thanks, James. So for me, I think it's openness, honesty, and creativity.
Brilliant.
I nominate Sophie.
Share their jobs. Sarah.
Mine would be remember you're hiring humans.
Ooh.
Brilliant. Yeah. Who are you passing to, Sarah?
Sorry, Rob.
Potential and likability.
Brilliant.
Excellent.
Great. Well, thank you very much to all of our panelists today. I think it's been a really interesting discussion and lots of key points to come out of it. Our plan is to write up a bit of a blog on some of the key themes in here. So you might see that coming through your inbox at some point in the next couple of weeks. But thank you all for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much.
Been brilliant. Thank you for your time. And hopefully see you on another one that we might do in the near future.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.